Hey guys, Dark Humility here. Today we have yet another Season 10 closed beta demo and mini guide. This will be my only Barb demo and mini guide this season, as the Barb did get some changes in Season 10, but didn't really necessarily get anything groundbreaking or necessarily like transformative compared to Season 9. At least not in my opinion after testing him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show off a build that is actually really sick, and I can't quite claim credit for it. I wish I could. I did test it and put it on my tier list, but a member of my channel, let's see if we can pull him up here, named Barry Gaming, I will link his YouTube video to the YouTube video I'm making right now, so that you guys can check out his video that he made on it in his channel. He has given me permission though to get more eyes on this build and to show people an awesome use of the new runeword Rapture. So this runeword is really good on tons of poison builds and other builds that can use it on an Act 5 Mercenary. It's very expensive, but it's very good, and of course makes awesome use of Jaw and Low, which I feel like could definitely use a bit more runes to be used, maybe Vex as well. The lower resist on striking is typically just how it's used. However, this build, because of the way leap works on a Barbarian, can actually proc enough fissures to make the fissure extremely devastating. And while leap barb itself can be very powerful with a really good weapon, as you'll see of course from the numbers and the tiers, which are definitely in the green, this weapon makes it sick. It's just really fun, it's really powerful, and the whole setup is really cool because it makes use of two curses, using another very unique item that we don't usually see very often on a barb build called Raker's Virtue as well. And of course, I use a bunch of other items as well to lower negative enemy fire res and to get some other things out there. I'll talk about some build options though, and I'll talk about how the build works. And you guys might be inspired to build it yourself because it's a really fun barb build. And the barb's definitely making use of the Rapture two-hander maul or slash hammer, which is the only thing you can make it in a way that is very unique and very fun. Anyway, this is the Rapture Leaf Barb, aka Fissure Leaf Barb, and a really sick build that is unique to Season 10. Let's go over his stats. So you're going to want enough strength and dexterity to wear your gear. I like having enough dex to also have attack rating for leaps so that I can sustain and also do some good physical damage. Rapture does a pretty solid amount of damage itself, and it's got really consistent damage values on the Ogre Maul particularly, because Ogre Mauls just have very high minimum damage and a lower max damage, and that is very good for leap in general. So leap attack, definitely very good to have weapons like that. So it does a lot of physical damage. It's a very good type of item for that. I get some attack rating for it. Barbs typically have good defense just from 1 point to shout, so that's good as well. And then I can put the rest of my points in vitality. You can make it even tankier though. You can maybe take some points out of dex. You can definitely go over 3,000 health. You can get a lot more health with like corruptions and some other things, but there are limitations to closed beta that always make that difficult. Alright. And so next up here, we're going to show off some of the advanced stats. So Elemental Pierce is actually really good. Having it, of course, on the Mercenary and on the lower resist on the weapon is where you're going to get most of it on this build. But you could also use Ormus as well. I like Ormus, but we're actually going to use Dragon, which is the suggestion of the person that originally made the build. I tried it with some other options as well. He told me he was impressed by the other options I came up with, so there's definitely a bunch of different ways to do it, but you want Elemental Pierce. The Hydra is on striking as well, though. On striking is just so good with leap attack, so you get all these things on striking. Hydras do help a bit with cleaning up the monsters in the back end, so yeah, it's not too bad. It's definitely a decent idea here. Level 28 Hydra. I do like Ormus though. Can also do the job. Anyway, faster hit recovery, not too needed with leap attack. Most of the time you're in the air and you don't get hit, but you could use some better frames. I'm just, yeah, it's just bad. So you don't have to worry about that too much. No problem. course, you'll see the IS frames don't matter on this. It is like Whirlwind. Just totally ignore this. Don't get really... There's no attack speed for this skill. The only thing you have to worry about is the fact that there is leap speed. Short leaps tend to be better than big ones, but if you do a big one, having an item like Gorefoot or Cyclopean Roar can be nice for making them a bit better. I like kind of the ability to do both, so Gorefoot's is kind of nice. Short leaps, though, are easy to do even without them, so you could definitely use some more damage option there, but it's kind of nice. Life and mana per kill are really good on this build. I think I'm just going to have the Mana Leech, which will be fine. Mana Leech, Life Leech, MPK, LPK. Leech actually works on leap attacks, so you can get any of those corruptions, and they'll all be very helpful. Since we're on... I think I actually have both leeches here, so that's actually going to be nice. No problem. And then, of course, we have Deadly Strike, and we have Mana Leech, we have Life Leech, we have everything we need. You can have as much MF as you want, and good stuff. Alright, next up we're going to go over the skills. So on the skills, you're going to max out Leap Attack and all of its damage, because you do a decent amount of physical damage. It's going to be a good source of the damage, but it's not going to be... It's going to be like half of your damage on this build, maybe. Maybe not even. So you're going to want to max out, of course, Leap Attack like normal. And all the synergies. You always want these masteries in a barb, including one in a deep wounds, just for a little bit of extra damage if you can. This uses a hammer, so Rapture can only be made in hammers. Hammer type weapons, two-handed mauls, thunder mauls, that kind of thing. I like Ogre Maul because it's got consistent damage from leap attacks, so that's good. I think the originator of the build also used it as well, so that's very good. We have General Mastery. And, of course, we have Max. The rest I just put in a battle command for some extra damage and some plus skills. Don't really need anything else on this build, and it should function just fine. But of course, if you want to leap without actually using the leap attack, you can also leap as well. Alright. So, those are pretty simple parts of the build. The next thing's a little complicated. So this is an elemental barb. There's also elemental flame bellow whirlwind, which I had made a video for. I think season 7 or season 8 is still perfectly relevant. So if you want to do flame bellow barb, that's also a very strong elemental barb. I have a video up. It's still like I think 100% accurate in terms of what you want to do. I think the options are still there too. Like Corpse Mourn can be good on that build as well. But this one is a different fire barb, so we are using fire damage, but it's a little bit different. Leap procs are better than Whirlwind for Fissure. Yes, it's because you're actually going to be procking. So leap procs these things better than Whirlwind does because you pass through the enemies too quickly oftentimes in Whirlwind. You can do this with Whirlwind. But I think Leap actually makes it work quite a bit better. And it also means that you can get more procs for the dual curses as well, and you can really get the damage up. I think Whirlwind can also work on this build too, though. I do remember playing with that. It seems to be okay. I think Whirlwind's also a viable approach using a Rapture as well. But Leap is uniquely good at proccing things, so without Innocence, that's the key. So I'm not using Innocence here. If I was using Innocence, I could proc these things with Whirlwind. It's not as easy still, because you still pass through monsters a little too quickly. But you'd have to use Innocence, and so you can't use Dragon, and you'd be lacking Fire Repeaters from, like, Ormus. So that's a good question from the live chat as they're watching this right now. Cool stuff, cool stuff. Okay, so we also have, let's see. So that's a really cool aspect of this build. We have the dragon. Okay, so we have, yeah. Okay, so let's go on the Mercenary. So the Mercenary is a standard, I could use Blessed Aim too if I wanted to get my attack rating up, if I wanted to get more HP. That's one way I could have done it instead of pumping Dex. Defiance is good though for the DR though, so that might help keep us alive on the Mercenary. You could do either one. It's kind of up to you. Blessed Aim also gives Deadly Strike, so it might increase your damage a little bit as well on average. Infinity though, really solid. It's going to drop the fire res of the monsters. There's a lot of fire damage on this build. You're going to want, of course, standard survivability and damage gear on the Mercenary, whatever that might be. You know, DR, Deadly Strike, Life Leech, attack speed. Innocence and Ferocity. Innocence is really key on this build because it will proc Ferocity. And that taunt will make sure the monsters group up and take even more damage from the Fissures and the Hydras. So that's actually something that makes this build a lot better. It's not mandatory, but it makes it a lot better. And of course, it'll also keep the damage off of you as well. So the Blade Shield off the Innocence will proc the taunt. That's 2 Zod runes. It's a Cham rune. I realize it's a lot, but if you want an optimal Mercenary, that's what it looks like in the endgame. And then, let's talk about the main gear. So the main gear is going to be Rapture, which is in an F Ogre Maul. You don't lose durability on Leap to the best of my knowledge, so you can use an F1 and you'll be just fine, even though it's not indestructible. That does change from season to season though, so if that changes again, I'll let you know. I feel like it's changed like 4 times, gone back and forth between durability not losing on weapons, but it doesn't. You don't lose it off weapons. It's good. There's no attack speed on Leap once again, so those are good things. And proccing that lower resist and that Fissure with Leap attack is very good. You don't need Innocence on you, unlike the Mercenary, because Leap attack hits so many monsters that you end up proccing procs without it. You have Dragon or Ormus. Those are my favorite option. It's probably Ormus, but I don't know. Ormus, Dragon looks a little cooler, so I'm going to use it for the demo. Also, it does clean up some of the enemies on the back end. Ormus just gives you a lot of fire pierce and fire damage. Corpse Mourn would be safer because it would proc those returns once you kill the monsters, but it would also split up the monsters, so it would make it a little bit tougher to group them up for the damage. So I don't know if I recommend Corpse Mourn on this particular elemental meme build, but it is what it is. It's not much of a meme build though, as you'll see, because it's incredibly strong. Raker's Virtue, of course. The main thing about this item is that, of course, it gives you curse resistance, which is nice, and it'll make it a little bit easier to survive. But it allows you to apply an additional curse. So you can apply the lower resist off the Rapture, but we can also apply Amp from Atmas. And this makes us do a shit ton of damage with both the weapon itself and the fire. I think that's pretty solid. That's a really solid choice in this build. Alternatively, you could just not use Atmas, and you could probably just go all in on the fire damage. And instead, you could use Kira's for just like a lot of negative fire res. Cannot be frozen. And then, of course, which is something I use on Flame Bellow Barb. And then you can use, you know, whatever aim you want to, really. You could probably use, like, High Lords for Deadly Strike. You could use Saracens for ED and Res. Whatever you really want to do. You could even use Seraphs for plus skills and, like, damage to undead. You know, there's a lot of things you could do. You could use Maras, you know. Plenty of options there if you're not using dual curses. Hellmouth. Hellmouth gives negative enemy fire as it also has Meteor and Molten Boulder unstriking, which, you know, we do have a decent amount of fire damage on this build, so even though there's no synergies for those do some damage, and they just look really cool, so. And then obviously the negative enemy fire is the core stat. You're going to want, of course, some leeches and damages and ARs down here if you can get them. I'm actually not sure. Do I have... Oh, yeah, I have CBF and the Rakers. Okay, we're good. But yeah, you could use Ravenfrost if you didn't have Cannot Be Frozen up there. Good survivability stuff. Plus skills are always good on this build. Let's be real. Plus skills are good on any build. And then I like Dual Leech Ring. That's really good. And then DR from Dungos. You could also use String for more Life Leech. I think we have a pretty decent amount of Life Leech on this setup, though. And then Mana Leech. And then the big one here is just Leap and Leap attack movement speed. So it makes it a little cleaner when you're doing like long leaps particularly. So when you're trying to get to the next pack. I like it. You could also use Go Riders. It's kind of a cool application though of an item that doesn't see a lot of late game use though. And then of course Barb Torch, Annie, and mostly fire damage large charms. Now you'll notice that they're only 3%. Right now, as of this moment in closed beta season 10, they've been nerfed to 3% maximum. Now, that's probably because the 4% ones can overtake GCs in a lot of cases. This doesn't really affect any of the builds that use these. I've tested so many of the builds on closed beta for the nerf, and it's like negligible at best. Some builds that might be affected are things like Teeth ever so slightly. Some of the magic damage builds, right, that maybe are lacking in like damage to begin with, like Teeth, maybe Holy Bolt, Fist of the Heavens. Things like that might have a small negative impact, but for the most part, it's not really hurting the builds. It might have a negative effect on people wanting to pick them up, though. I'm not sure. That being said, I don't think it's actually possible they might not even go through with this change. It's just a test in the beta. They might not. They might try it for a season and see how the market shapes out, or whether or not people still want them. They're still very good for any kind of proc build, any kind of on equipment damage gear like on the Paladin. Still very good for magic damage builds, still good for some elemental builds. There's definitely less cases where I'd probably use them now because they have to take up the small charm slot if they are 3%. But overall, I think they're still fine, and they're still helping these builds, and these builds are still incredibly strong even with the nerf. So I can assure you all that. They're still doing what they're doing, and that's all good stuff. Anyway, we're going to test going to show off some demos now for this awesome build. I explained all the complications with it, so hopefully you guys enjoy. Let's get into the fun. Alright, so this build's pretty simple. Let's do it. Ha 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 ha! Fire! Look at that. It just looks like devastation. You know, if Rapture looked like something, this is what a Rapture would look like. Hope we don't experience one in real life. Oh man. So all these procs, man, the Fissure Proc is very high level Fissure. That's why this is strong. And it procs a lot off all the cows and the lower resist. You don't need Innocence because when you hit all the monsters with leap attack, it just procs so well. A lot better than Whirlwind does, actually, which was a question from the chat. Whirlwind would proc better with Innocence, of course, but then you have to like double back on monsters and probably doesn't feel as good. In this one, though, you just do small leaps like I can do here, and you can just kill everything. So you can do smaller leaps. You can do big leaps to get to the next pack. Mercenary will follow. Notice the Merc is taunting all the monsters, so they can't do anything and they group up. So he's got his double. This is a very expensive version of this build, but you know, you probably don't need all the swag on the Mercenary necessarily, but it does help. Probably just go with an Infinity or be done with it. I gotta say though, the lower resist and the conviction though is pretty big. You'll notice when I don't have the Mercenary, the damage is a bit lower. The Mercs over here having a fun time. But yeah, I gotta give credit again to Barry Gaming for discovering this during the closed beta and alerting this to my attention so that I can get this out to the public, so in case people want to see an awesome bar build this season with using the new Runeword. It's definitely one case where the Barb has some very unique powers, such as being very tanky and having some very unique abilities to proc and clean maps like butter with Whirlwind and things of that nature using open wounds. Barb has a lot of cool builds, and they're all very strong. Yeah, so one application people theorized you could probably use this Runeword for would be like shape-shifting, like proccing Fissure with like fully synergized Fissure, for instance, on the Druid. The problem with that is that the Rapture is too slow. So you'll notice that the Rapture only has 20 attack speed, and to turn into a wolf to proc it in melee form on the Druid, 20 attack speed on a hammer in shapeshift forms when you need all your attack speed on your weapon pretty much is really slow. Really slow. It's like painfully slow is what I would use. Like, it's not happening. It's really bad. So something like this, though, even without the synergies, you can get enough procs on the Barb, and it's high enough level where you can get the lower resist and you can get the fissure. And you can just jump around and make it clean. So that's pretty cool, right? Let's do a couple more demos, though, just to show you guys what this looks like and maybe some other maps. Let's see. Let's do Ashen Plains, actually. That seems like a fun one. No fire immunes. My lightning res is garbage, though, so I could die. That's alright. There's always ways to fix that, but I'm not going to bother because not like I can trade for whatever I want. Merc is an aura bot. Yeah, he's getting that taunt in there, man. He's getting the conviction. He's a very good aura bot. Alright, cool. You'll notice when there's less density, it's not quite as effective, so this is... Oh, wow. See, I knew it. Dang, mid-leap, man. That's dirty. Can't really, like, pot mid-leap. That can be rough there. 25 light res in Ashen Plains. I don't really recommend it. But, you know, I thought he might be okay. I guess they had a lot of souls there, so... Oh well. It's pretty cool though. Let's actually do a slightly different map here. Yeah, that one was a little rough. I could do the new map on him actually. Leap isn't as safe for hardcore, it is true, but you can make this really safe though. You just need lots of sustain, just need really short leaps. Life leech is really good. And then obviously make sure your res isn't as low as mine and you'll be okay. Might have to sacrifice a few LCs, it's not going to matter much if you do that. I just like showing things at their maximum potential, and that's how I test things for damage purposes. For the Season 10 tier list, which I do release by the way. By around the end of open beta or just after the end of open beta, so look out for that. Look out for the tier list and infographic and see where all the builds stand in late game mapping. We did a very, very thorough testing pass this season, so can definitely get a very solid idea of what's going on. Anyway, that was fun, but also dangerous. Juicy Throne is good. True, it is. Yeah, Throne is no fire immunes. We're gonna probably do Throne next, actually. Gotta show it off in a tier 2 real quick here, though. Rapture, baby. New Runeword's crushing it. Alright, boss, where are you at? Yeah, I'm taking a lot of damage to the volcanoes there. Yeah, boss is a little tough on this build because there's not a lot of monsters to proc all the effects, so... Gonna have to kill him with, like, physical leap and just, yeah. There you go. Of course, I only have 20 fire res, so that's another problem as well. Definitely need more res charms. Or just res corruptions, or... I don't know, I could be less greedy here. Instead of fire facets, I can use some runes, you know? I love being greedy though, it's so fun. If you're playing software, man, don't you guys like being greedy too? Just get damage. It's alright if you have to use some juice here and there. Oh well. Innocence is not enough with the low attack speed to make the Fissure all that effective on it. It's still really painful to use on a druid. Yeah, you guys gotta understand the shape-shifting thing with the low attack speed, Innocence isn't enough. If you run into the middle of the monsters, you're still not gonna be doing it much. Oh yeah, it's bad. You're better off just building a Fissure druid, you know. Which I might do Fissure or Volcano in one of these videos, so you can see what I'm talking about. Anyway, Peter Cottontail is crushing face. Let's do one more demo here, and then we'll say goodbye to this awesome build for now. But you'll see you in Season 10, and perhaps some of you guys might even achieve an even stronger version of this one than I have. Yeah, it's bad, man. It's not good. But it's okay, because guess what? The Bard needs some love, too. I know the Druid gets a lot of love, but, you know, Barb's got some awesome things going on. Got very strong open wounds builds. He's got a leap attack. War Cry is sick. Physical Nova. And then, of course, his ability to proc something like Rapture is just sick. Which has a very high level Fissure. Every time you hear that bram, bram, bram sound, that's Fissure. That's terrifying, terrifying. That's some dangerous monsters there. Definitely like the Defiance for that. A little bit of tankiness on this build can go a long way. Doesn't even need to be super tanky unless you're playing hardcore, of course. But in hardcore, I would definitely go like, I probably wouldn't use Raycores, honestly. I'd probably use, Koa. Make sure my res is maxed out. No extra Pierce. Make sure I get some other stuff as well. This is not a hardcore build. This is a very Dedge build if I make a mistake. Anyway, GG guys. And so that is it for the mini guide and demo for the Raycores Leap Barb Procer, the Fissure Leap Attack Barbarian. GG guys, I'll see you guys in Season 10. And Mad Lab over and out. GG, crush it, smash it, let's get it.